All right. We're live.
Sick.
So, welcome back to the Yarn Yard podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Austin. And today we have Scott McIntosh. Welcome, man.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Yeah, it's good to be here. So, I stumbled across you on Instagram and I bumped into you at Lennox Head.
I remember at Papaya.
Yeah, shortly after it. And I think there was like a video that you made that, was it a page like Source Junkie or something shared a video of you?
Yeah, they did. And then it was a really cool thing that got shared, I feel like.
Well, that's how I found you.
Wow.
And then, I just bumped into you at Lennox Head.
Crazy.
And, at that point, you were writing your book, which I now have a copy of.
Sick. Have you read a page?
I've read it.
Oh, sick.
Yeah,
done.
Yeah. It was very different to what I thought it was going to be. Like, it's very to the point, which I think's...
A lot of people do say that.
I think it's a good thing, though, because there's a lot of complexity to the topics that you're talking about.
Mm.
And if it was, like, in-depth, then I think a lot of people would just run away.
I think I definitely wrote the book so that, like, for example, the principle of vibration, it's like you can go and talk about that endlessly, but really, how do you use the principle of vibration to best impact someone's daily life? It's like simplify it in the terms of an emotional frequency. So you're just like, your vibrational frequency is the dominant emotion in which you are operating from each day. So when you can just help someone to understand that on a simple level and it's quick and direct, you don't lose them in all the sauce. You don't lose them in the philosophy. Because I think some people enjoy the philosophy, but most people just want to know, yeah, thanks for that. How do I use it in my everyday life and what does it mean? So, I think a lot of people thought the book was going to be like a lot almost like deeper than it was.
Yeah.
But I don't think stuff necessarily has to be complicated to be like deep. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, totally. I think it's like the way you framed it, and there's like, a space at the back of the book for like writing a reflection, and at the start of it, you've kind of got like a checklist as well, which is, I think what's interesting about it is it's probably one of the first books that I've thought I could come back to this, and that's probably, I don't know if that was your intention, but...
My intention was just there's 33 things, so it just gives you a task. But those 33 things, just say you did them in linear order and you started from chapter 1. It would take you 33 days of implementing it every single day to finish the book properly. But then you can go back to the start and do those things for the rest of your life. Yeah. Like, for example, giving someone a compliment. Like, for me, giving someone a compliment, that's one of the chapters in the book. For me, that's that is one of the biggest things that helps to shift my awareness from being judgmental to now just looking for something nice to say. And that's simple, but like it goes a long way. So like if you see a mate and he's got a cool jumper on, something as simple as that, you can be like, man, I like your jumper. And that small comment might ripple confidence throughout the rest of their day. And then because of them acting in confidence, it might create an amazing opportunity for them. So just because of your one act of intentional words, it could have a huge effect on the other person's life. So I think if you can just, start to apply those simple things, you can use them every day. So the book doesn't really have a shelf life. It's just how much do you want to do them?
Yeah. And you could almost do like multiple chapters in one day, but
100%.
I think it's like, it's cool in the sense that it's something that you can go back to, and it's something that you can implement as a practice, which I thought was
Yeah, you can also do the book randomly. Like if you want to open to a random page, that's more like jumping into the I'll let you choose what you want me to do for the day, which is kind of how I like doing it.
Yeah.
But because I definitely feel like every single page in that book has a vibration, and every single page in that book was written when I was in a different mind state, because we're not in the same mind state every day. So it's like when you open that book to that random page, you're almost meeting me where I was at on that given day. So it's that's another way to think of it too.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your inspiration for writing the book?
I came here after like a really hard 3 to 4 years of my life where like everything I'd ever known got flipped upside down, and I was physically, emotionally, and spiritually exhausted, and I didn't really know what I was kind of doing anymore. And I always had this dream of like opening up my own health space. So I did that in the middle of COVID, and that thing didn't work out financially. I just lost a heap of money, and then like my dog died, and I was also like just not in a good place. And then I just almost gave up on life. I just surrendered to it, and I was like, I can't fight this anymore. So I moved up here. And when I was up here, I was like, you know what? I'm going to have a year off just to work out what I actually want to do with my life. And all I'm going to do is get myself back to physical, spiritual, and emotional wellness. And I think after about 4 months of just being here and really enjoying Byron Bay, like the sun, the gym, the surf, all the beautiful food, I started to get this like crazy amount of like inspiration to jump back into learning. And I started studying and reading, and then sharing what I was reading on Instagram. And then people started to reach out and say, man, you've got to put this into a little book. And then I started to kind of think, man, that would actually be really cool. I've always wanted to do that. And then I just decided I'm going to start. So I just started. And once I started to like finish chapters, I started to get a lot of momentum. And then I was drawing a picture for every chapter, and I hit so many walls along the way. But yeah, it almost didn't happen. And I think that's the beautiful thing with a lot of the projects that we embark on. You know, so many times they almost didn't make it, but it's the ones that you just endure and persevere. They really make it worthwhile. But the inspiration to get like, to tie it back, the inspiration behind the book was actually sharing the lessons I'd learned and portraying them in the most simple way possible to share with other people. Pretty much. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah, bro, I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think there's a lot of wisdom in there, and a lot of it is kind of like around universal law and hermetic law. And
yeah,
where did that come about? Because for me, I think that's what I could resonate. How I could resonate with you is like a lot of the principles you're talking about. I feel like I stumbled across, but have been so valuable. And yeah, so where did that?
Honestly, I read the Kybalion, and it changed my life. I feel like your body almost starts to like crave like a different type of knowledge than you've been listening to. And I started to like want to go deeper, but I'm literally like, I don't know how to go deeper. And then I started to started finding books. Books just started showing up to help me to go deeper. And when I read the Kybalion, and what got me was in that book, it said the universe is mental. Like mentalism is the first principle. And as soon as I read that, everything just clicked. I'm like, that is so true. Like we are creating everything internally, and our internal reality was creating our outer experience. And once I started to really grasp that, I started to understand all of the other principles a lot easier, that all of my thoughts, feelings and intentions had massive consequences. And then that started to bring me into like, well, yeah, if I want to create something magical in my life, I have to get my internal environment in line with the external environment that I wish to create. And at that time, my internal environment was in turmoil and I was experiencing external turmoil too. And once I started to bring back harmony within, everything outside started to fall into place. So oftentimes we like go around trying to fix everything externally and it just seems so hard. But the moment you just take a step back and you're like, I'm going to just breathe and get this right inside, there's so much less resistance. But because of like the way we've been wired, we truly believe that I can stop addressing the internal, and when I fix the external, then I'm just going to be happy. And sometimes we can get trapped in that for like years. Sometimes people die in that environment without ever working that out. So I think, yeah.
Well, I think that's probably a big reason as to why people do die as well. Is if you're in that internal turmoil, then that
dis-ease.
Yeah.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's full on.
Yeah, bro. I just have like this massive thing in my heart now that like I see a little part of myself in all the young men that I surround myself with, and I see us all suffering to some degree, but I feel like through making so many big mistakes, like I've made big mistakes, like I've had big car accidents, I've almost killed someone, I've almost gone to jail because of these things. I've already been divorced. I've already left a religion that I was in my whole life. I've been so in depth into belief systems. I've been so stubborn. So if I see a part of myself in anyone else, I really empathize with like someone who is suffering almost unnecessarily. So I think like so much of the drive, and especially we've got it in our friendship group, which is amazing, is like we can all create a space to share our experience to help each other work through this already really hard situation of life. And I think that is just like amazing. And the book is also like a small little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think we're like so many people, including myself, like I think we try to really just do it on our own. And I've kind of told myself that there's almost like more of a reward in that, which there is to some degree. But I think like ultimately we are here to work with one another. Like we're a lot more capable when we're sharing a vision and working alongside one another.
You can do it on your own, but you can multiply and intensify the experience by doing it with others. It's like you can make yourself the most beautiful meal and set a table for one, but it's almost like it didn't happen if no one was there to share it with. It's like just looking across the table and just being like, how good's this? You know? And I think Instagram gives you a platform to share if you're lonely. But could you imagine doing life on your own without Instagram or without social media?
It would be different.
Yeah, no one to show off to, no one. You couldn't be alone without social media unless you had a very special type of personality that you really did not like anyone else in your space. But from my experience with dealing with humans, I think being surrounded by people and sharing with people is such a key piece to being happy. And one thing I have noticed is when you can become part of something bigger and realize that you're not the center of this complete existence, but you are a very important, beautiful piece in the big puzzle, it can also alleviate a lot of suffering because you can understand your smallness, and that's smallness in a good way, not in like an insignificant way, but just like it's okay just to be part of the bigger picture. Yeah.
Yeah, I love the way you put that, because I think you can get caught up in like either polarity, which is like it's all about us, or it's not about us at all. And I think you piece that together quite well. A way to kind of maybe better understand that it's like you do matter and the world matters, and but we play our own role in
100%.
Yeah.
And the paradox of that is like you're everything and nothing. And the worst thing to think of is that you're everything. It's like you walk into a cafe and I feel like you see it especially with girls, but like, you know, you walk into a cafe or a restaurant and you don't feel like you're dressed your best, or you don't feel like you're in shape. And you think the whole cafe is looking at what you look like. You think everyone's stopping to see you walk in the room. But in reality, no one cares because everyone's dealing with their own insecurities. And once you just realize like, hey, I know this means a lot to me, but I'm actually not that important. Actually understanding you're not important is completely freeing. It's the illusion of thinking that you are important and that you're the biggest piece in other people's life that causes you all that pain. So I think it's just such an amazing tool to reflect on the principle of what's most personal is most universal. All your insecurities that you feel that separates you from everyone else is the exact thing that you all have in common. So it's like almost comical.
Paradox.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I think polarity would be a great topic to dive into. And it's a section in your book as well.
Yeah.
What would you share in terms of like how seeing polarities helped you in your life?
I think it's a very hard topic almost to start talking on because there's polarity in everything. Night and day, low tide, high tide, hot water, cold water, masculine, feminine, like it's in everything. But
yeah, well, I think like for me, just understanding that, like, that there is, you know, yin yang. You can't have one without the other. You know, I think understanding that for me was like pretty huge. But to be able to apply it, I think it's like a different thing.
I think one thing is not to get caught up in polar extremes in your life, but to understand that a lot of truth sits somewhere in the middle. And we were talking with this before, and I'm a person who tends to like to go to either extreme of the spectrum. That's just the type of personality that I have. Like I can be the hardest worker in the room. I can just drive myself into the ground, and then I can be completely irresponsible with money and just blow all of it. I was vegan for 5 years. I wouldn't even eat anything that had a trace of egg in it. But then when that burns me out, I'll go and try the carnivore diet and just eat steak and eggs. And as I'm getting older, what I'm realizing is that I'm exhausting myself hitting these extremes of the spectrum. But what's working for me is finding somewhere in the middle. Don't drive myself to the bone working, but then don't be irresponsible with my money. I don't have to be vegan. I don't have to be carnivore. I can just meet somewhere in the middle and intuitively eat what feels right on any given day and eat whole foods. I can use polarity with my emotions. I tend to be very extreme. Like sometimes I get so happy and so crazy connected when I'm running that I feel like I could almost float off into the sky. But then I've almost laid in bed and experienced like I keep thinking about my death and I try and get so comfortable with dying that I almost feel like I've almost died. And I tend to just like to delve into those extremes, but now I'm understanding, like, I don't need to fantasize about my death. I'll meet it when it's ready. And on my runs, what I can do is I can pull that energy back within and just allow that to ooze out slower rather than all in that moment, like savoring a good meal. So I think there's so many practical ways that you can practice polarity, but one of the hardest things is to identify how polarity is working in your own life, almost like becoming conscious of the way that you behave.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I think I'm very similar. I feel like I had to go to the extreme points to kind of calibrate, is to know where the ends are.
Yes, 100%.
I think that's an important part of the process and becoming to know that. But then you got to kind of, I think through that experience you can realize like how it might not have served you, and then you take that into.
It's really good hitting those extremes too. Like, I know my lesson with finances, and it's very personal for me to talk about, but I'm always in feast or famine, and I live my life like that. And I'm starting to recognize now at 35 that, man, that's not the way. Like, I can go out, and I love shouting all my mates. It's like one of my favorite things to do. And I've been known for that in my life, and I've been so reckless with money. But at the same time, as quick as I give it away, there's this crazy thing that I feel like God always allows me to get it back just as quick as I give it away. And my attitude towards money has always been, it's dirty, it's disgusting, fuck money. I'm just going to burn this thing really quick, and then I'm going to go hard and get it back just as quick. And now, because I've hit both ends of those spectrums, I'm starting to come back to the middle and just be like, you know what? I need to have a little bit for a rainy day. And when I go out, I don't need to spend $800 on a dinner. I can have I can still have a good time, but I can really pull this back and start to find that balance again. So I think I'm so fascinated with polarity, and I've read so much on it, is because it must be the thing that I need to master more than anything. Yeah.
Yeah.
How have you felt it?
Maybe me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How have you used what you've learnt about polarity so far in your life?
I guess we have quite a similar story. Money has been a big one, because I feel like being in scarcity, it doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
And being at the other side of that spectrum and just having, I guess, being more reckless also doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
And it doesn't offer a lot of stability. But I think I see it most in nature, and I like how you kind of, or maybe it was me kind of jumping to, when you were using money as an example, and what you give and you spend on others comes back to you. I wholeheartedly believe as well. And so I kind of see that relationship as one that's very similar with nature, which is that if we take away everything that's material and everything that was built up, that if you're in the wild, that's how I'd want to operate, is from a giving place, because I know from a giving place I'm going to be able to receive. Yeah.
Fully agree, man.
And it's, that's probably where it's helped me most. I think it's kind of seeing that polarity in nature, and then seeing that that's also a part of me too.
So cool, man. Yeah. It's good to hear different people's perspectives on it. And Yeah, it's funny how you see different friends in your circle and you see everyone's attitude towards finance and how it works for them and how it doesn't work for them. So, yeah, your biggest strength, I always say this every time I talk to people, is your biggest strength will always end up becoming your biggest weakness, and your biggest weakness will be your biggest strength. And how that works is like, I have one of my weaknesses is actually being able to completely let go of consequence. So I can give knowing that there's going to be lots of consequences to what I do, and I can still do it. And that's a weakness. But at the same time, it gives me the ability to act with a free spirit. And then on the other end of that spectrum, you have some people, their responsibility and the amount of control that they can have over their finances is their biggest strength. But then their inability just to let it go and just let it flow, that can also paralyze them. So within the decisions that you make around money, there's also the polarity of the really positive things and the really negative things that can transpire after the decisions that you make. But I think the balance lies somewhere in the middle.
I think I kind of want to tie that back into what we were touching on before, which is that we're a lot stronger when we work together. And I think like financially, that's a big one.
100%.
Like if we're all like, and it's how the world's run for however long, but we live very individualistic lives and very much kind of keep what's ours to ourselves. And I've kind of seen it in a lot of, people in my life, and myself included, that are very reluctant to share what we've exchanged our time and energy for with other people. But if we are able to see past that and kind of see, or we're able to kind of like form our relationships to be more in harmony with one another, then those ebbs and flows of being able to give and being able to receive from giving becomes like a lot more synergistic.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Yeah. I think like it's really funny because there's always givers and there's always takers in this life. There's just some people who are allergic to their back pocket. It's just like they can't. But I think if you get a couple of people together, you have a couple of mates, and you have a good dynamic with giving and taking, it's the ultimate way to live. And I feel like we got that. Like I have that with my group of friends at the moment. Like I am more than happy to give my time and money to them. And I fully know that when I need it, it'll be right back there. But I think when we start to protect ourselves is when we've been burnt and we know that we've given and given and given and it's not respected, it's disrespected and it's been taken advantage of. But all that does is I feel like that takes a little bit of awareness, and I feel like the older you get, you start to see straight away someone's true character. You see it straight away. And then you get to decide, do I give this person a chance to change and talk to them about their behavior because I value who they are? Or do I save my energy and understand that they will potentially never change and they're not worth my energy? And that sounds harsh, but you do have to make those type of decisions as to whether or not you're going to go in an energetic exchange with someone. And in my experience, some people can be brought to a state of awareness on their stinginess, for an example, and they can change. And then some people you just need to recognize that, hey, they're an amazing dude. I'm happy to have a chat with them at the gym, or I'm happy to say g'day, but I'm not inviting them into my circle of energetic exchange. It's just going to be a mere conversation-based friendship. So it just takes a little bit of I guess, filtering.
Mm.
But yeah.
And you know what I think that filter is it's choosing to operate from love or fear. And something that has really come through to me recently is, and it's certainly not my own, I heard it somewhere and it's kind of really settled, is generosity isn't conditional.
Yeah.
So like if we're giving from a place that we're expecting something back from, then we're also like wasting our energy and kind of attaching to something that we don't need to.
100%.
And I think that's like an interesting filter is and something I've like had to take a step back from myself is if I'm making decisions, especially with money, it can't be from a place that's like conditional, because then I get hurt and other people also get hurt in that process.
I always think of the scenario is there's nothing better than giving to someone that could never repay you. That's the ultimate feeling. It's like why rescuing a dog is amazing. They'll never repay you financially, but they will repay you in so many other ways. And I feel like giving to homeless people. But then what hurts is that, and I think this is where you need to be careful, to give to people that are in such a huge position to give themselves, but they choose not to. See, that's where I kind of would place conditions on my generosity, because I would love to be generous to people that could never pay me back. But you have to ask yourself, is this generosity or stupidity if someone else is in a position to generously provide for themselves and those around them, but they are taking advantage of you doing it for them? What is their viewpoint and what is the level of respect that they have towards your generosity? Whereas when someone is not in a position to take care of themselves or others, that allows you to give from a place of non-expectation, because you're just giving because they can't do it themselves. And that's what I think's beautiful. And then it's about having your internal intuition turned on and ciphering through the people which genuinely need the help and the people who are just quite happy to take and never put back in. Yeah. It's a hard one. Yeah.
I like that.
Yes.
I think it's interesting. There's so many ways to look at so many different things, but I like your spin on that.
And people who respect you and people who respect others and respect themselves, they live with a certain level of dignity where they will say, I'm sorry, but I can't take from you because I'm in a position to do this myself. And then it also takes a certain amount of humility to say, man, I actually need some help. Like, thank you so much for allowing me to ask. And that's a nice thing. So it's just like, all of us having the level of awareness. And I think when you make good decisions around giving, then you don't live with resentment. And you see it all the time. People walk around resenting people, but they're essentially blaming the other person for the way they have told the other person to treat them. So when you make decisions based on a high level of awareness, you take full responsibility for the amount that you've given. And if you are taken advantage of, you still do not resent that person because you understand that you told them to treat you that way. But that's a very high level of responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of like what you write about in the book, in your book, is does require quite a level of awareness, and that's why I think it's good that it's like short and to the point, because I think you need to start somewhere. And once you start, then, you know, I'm still processing like beliefs and philosophies that I've thought about 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
And like they just continue to deepen.
That's amazing.
So I think it's I guess where I kind of want to come from with this conversation is if there's aspects of like what we're talking about, or if someone, you know, decides to buy your book and some of this stuff is resonating, like where do you, to be able to simplify it, like where do you think a starting place is? Or what was that for you?
That's a good question. I really think an amazing thing to start asking yourself is not why is this happening to me, but coming back to the same question of how did I create this for myself? And if you can just say that one question every single day, that will start to drive you inward, and then you will start to understand that in some way, shape or form, you have created every single circumstance in your life. So not why is this happening to me? Don't worry about the why, but just how did I create this for myself? And then that starts to force you to go back within and look for answers inside rather than look for people, places or things to justify where you're at. And that can be used in a good way or a bad way. Like if you're in a good situation, don't say, why did this happen to me? Why did I get lucky? Say, how did I create this life for myself? Work out how to do it. Work out how you got there. If something bad happens, don't say, why did this happen to me? Ask yourself, how did I create this for myself? And like I said, it definitely takes a lot of responsibility back. But then you get to own your wins and you get to own your losses. And that's it. And I think that is the starting point.
Yeah. No, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's like a big, like, like that's a great place to start. And I think it's a good distinction to make as well when things do go right.
Yeah, bro.
Because I think that's when it's very easy to be like, you know, I don't deserve this. And it's then you're kind of stepping further away from, I guess, the awareness.
You know how this happened, to put it in like in an actual like real life situation, is like since I was like 17, I've been concreting my whole life. And I don't know why, I was just like, I know I'm a concreter. I'm not resisting this. But in my mind, I'm like, I feel like I have something more to give than doing driveways. And that's not against anyone who's doing driveways. If you're content doing that, that's epic, man. Like, go you. But in me, I never felt like it was like my true thing. I just fell into it. And I remember like, I would do this visualization and I'd be like, I don't know how, I don't know why. I'm shit at sport. I'm shit at most things. Like, I'm not talented at all in anything. But I just kept doing this visualization. I'm like, I want to imagine my feet. Instead of going to work filthy and covered in dust every day, I want to imagine like some fresh Nikes on my feet with a real comfy tracksuit, and I want to be sitting on a plane and going somewhere to be paid. And I finished school in year 10. So like I had no education. I have no university degree. None of my friendship circle is doing anything but trades. And I'm like, how the hell am I ever going to get in that reality? I'm not in a financial position to like stop work and go back to school. And I'm like, man, I just don't know how I'm ever going to get there, but I can see it for myself so clearly. Like I seriously believed it. And I would just keep doing these meditations. And then while I was concreting, I just said to myself, I'm going to pretend like I'm a pro athlete. That's how I'm going to live my life. So I'd get up and go to the gym in the morning. I would study the body. I started eating like everything. I'd check the labels. And I just started to live like my body, mind, and soul was something that I would get paid for one day. And it's so weird, but out of the blue, I just got a modeling job. And then the boys started saying to me at work, oh, it's fucking easy for you to go do that. You just get paid $4,000 a day to do modeling. And what people thought was just like, why did that happen to him? How come he got that opportunity? Internally, man, I was like, no, you actually have no idea. I wasn't asking why, but I'll tell you how I created this for myself. I've seen this for myself for so long, and I didn't even know what the name was. And before you know it, man, I was sitting on a plane with a fresh pair of shoes and a topped up bank account on the way overseas, getting paid to look after myself. And I did not even know like what was going to happen, but I just saw that. And that's how like you need to start asking, why did this happen for me? Because that wasn't luck, man. It was like I was literally creating that from my mind for years before it happened. And then I started getting paid to look after myself. And I was like, yeah, shit. Like literally the chances of that happening as a concreter with no education, it was impossible. And now the fact that I've been able to write a book and like do all these things, it has actually nothing to do with like my ability, but it has everything to do with it's like I know how, and I know how things come into existence. So it's like I'm not waiting for a chance. I'm not waiting for the why. It's like I'm just going to go about the how. And how I do that, I believe, is fully visualizing things before you get them, and just like knowing that there is a potential reality for you to live in that state that's in your mind. So that's how I'd wrap it up into like a real life, like.
No, it's a great example.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess you would have experienced that with your like scooters and skating. Like you would have seen it one day.
Yeah, I guess a little bit different for me, because I feel like I'm only coming to these, like to those realizations like more recently. Like,
and how old are you?
28.
Yeah, so I'm like 7 years older than you. Like, yeah, you're at that massive turning point now at 28. So yeah.
Yeah. I guess what I take from what you said is that it reinforces, you know, what happens internally projects externally. And the more you try to control the external, you're just fighting what's happening, or you're perpetrating what's happening internally.
100%, man.
I think for me, it's been just like quite aimless most of my life.
Yeah.
But I can now look back on so many opportunities that I did create, maybe unconsciously, but made things happen for me. And
it's like you say aimlessly, but I like to think of not aimlessly, but you were just in non-resistance to what was. It's like you just probably went through life not forcing things, but just kind of being like, oh, okay, this is what it is now. That's okay for now. And that's also, there's also a massive strength in that too. You know, sometimes resistance.
It's just like not trying to control the outcome per se.
Yeah,
man. But I think there is like an element of drive, which needs to be in there somewhere.
And it also, you know what all these stories and what all these things reinforce is you're not what you do as a job.
Yeah.
You can just be doing something for the time being, but that's not you. So it's stupid to identify with like what you do or whatever. It's just like you can just be doing something just because that's where you are at that time. But if you can see yourself as, you know, something else, that's also a potential reality too. And I think if you can make it work for you once, you can like understand the mindset and the feeling that you have to get back to do it again. And the more you do it, the more confidence that you build in the process, and the more confidence and the more times you do something, it starts to become like riding a bike. It's like you don't need to think of how to ride the bike. You just start to act like that, and you fully understand how it works, and then you just start to operate out of that like high trust and full belief mode. And that's definitely a hard state to stay in, but you can get there, I believe. Yeah,
it's really interesting. I think it'll segue quite nicely into a question I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
which is, who is Scott? And I think it has, like, I very much like the idea that we're not, our jobs, and we're not, our name, we're not what we do when no one's looking. Like, there's, I think, an aspect of ourself that we can create and build, and that can become who we are consciously. But then I think there's also an aspect of ourselves that wouldn't change based on any circumstance.
Yeah, man.
No matter like what parents you had or what experiences
it's like, who's that
with.
person? I like to do this, and like I like to think of like, who would you be if someone removed all of your skin so you didn't look like anything? It was just like you. It's like, I'm not a this, I'm not a that, I'm not that, but like I'm just like an awareness almost. I would say Scott is like in my positive self, I have like so much love to give. Like I'm love. I love my friends. I love everything. I love life. I'm all that is love. I'm all that is goodness. I'm all that is empathy. And then there's my shadow self. And I believe that we all have that too. And I'm also that all that is bad, all that is deceitful, all that is darkness. But I choose, and I think where we get our power is the one that, like, which awareness do we feed each day? And I'm in a stage of my life that I am doing everything possible to be that light at the moment. So if I took away all my egoic layers and I was to sit in this room as a blank piece of energy, what would it feel like to be around Scott, or this presence of Scott with no face? I feel like to sit around me would just feel like a loving energy if there was nothing else. Like if you couldn't see me, but just to sit next to me or be in the presence of my energy right now, that's what it would be. And that's where I'm at in my life right now. And I've also had moments in my life that if I was faceless and I was just an energy, and you walked into a room and asked who Scott was, you would say this person is pain, is darkness, is like turmoil, and is like almost like disturbed. So I've been both. And I believe who we are is almost like the dominant emotion that is running through us at any given time, because that's like the energetic body. That's who you are as an energy. And no amount of like looks or nice clothing or anything can replace what the energy says. And energy is the loudest form of language. So at the moment, that's what Scott is. He's like, I feel like pure love, gratitude, and awareness at the moment. But I have been on the definitely been on the opposite spectrum to that. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that honesty, man.
Thanks, bro.
Yeah, I think it's awesome that you can speak about yourself in that way quite confidently as well. Like,
and I can only do that because I have, hey buddy, how are you? I can only do that because I have been the complete opposite to that. So I completely understand both ends of the spectrum, and I don't think it's egoic or I don't think it's cocky to just say I am pure love, because you are not saying that you are better than anyone else. You're not saying that no one else can be that. What I'm identifying as in this moment is something that we all are at our core anyway. And that's actually the thing that unites us all, is the love. Only the egoic layers of our personality would separate us. So I think, yeah, man, like the back of your van says, I saw it today, it says love is the revolution. That's spot on. How, like, I guess I've spoken enough on me. What is, like, who is Kevin?
Well, yeah, I appreciate you asking. I feel like me asking you that question, I had a very different, way that I was seeing it maybe. And in hearing your reflection, like, I do resonate a lot with that. And it's probably more about who you choose to be in any given moment. But something that I've, like, kind of have been sitting with more recently is, I guess I've been one to really just run from, like, labels or
it's cool,
being put in a box or categorized. And I feel like I've come full circle now to, like, kind of really look at myself and what characteristics are consistent about me. And, like, how I phrased the question was, like, who is Scott beyond, your influences and your parents, your job? And for me, I've kind of come to this place where I've realized that at my core, like, I'm an explorer. Like, I love exploring. And I'm a truth seeker.
I think you are too.
Yeah. And that's like, I don't think that could be shaken out of me.
No way. That's who you are at your core.
Yeah.
It will never be shaken out of you. Yeah.
But then there's another layer, which is, what you're kind of describing, and how I would say it's like who you choose to be is a whole different thing.
Yeah, I have a massive, as equal as my light energy, I have an equal darkness there too, which
that's polarity.
Yeah. On a, for example, I have a massive problem with justice. I hate injustice. Like, I feel like I'm always about fairness. And if I feel that the government or the police or anything is not treating me or the fellow people of the world fair, I could fantasize about the most darkest violence that you could imagine. But then I also understand that the level of my darkness is also motivated because of an uprightness in my spirit to uphold justice and truth. So when you're operating out of a dominant love personality, even your darkness will almost be motivated by love too. So your anger is not almost anger out of darkness. Your anger is coming out of a place to uphold the light. So with the whole COVID stuff, for example, I'm not the type of person who can be like, love's going to heal everything. I'm like, no, fuck that. If someone doesn't want something put in their arm, they have every single right not to. And if you're going to cross that line of injustice, I will meet it equally with violence too. And that goes for everything in my life. Like, I feel like I am.
But that is an expression of love, which is like what you're alluding to. Yeah.
Yes. So there's there's anger motivated by darkness, and there's anger motivated by the right thing. And I think almost what's lacking in our world at the moment is people avoid conflict and violence at all cost. But sometimes in my heart, as much as I would like to say love is the revolution, and I do believe that on some level, I also understand that there's an element of stop being bent over that will bring the revolution too, which pushes you back into like the masculine archetype, which I feel has been lost. And this world has manipulated any form of resistance to the system's way of doing things as almost rebellion and immaturity.
Yeah.
And if you're a man who stands up and like fights against that system, you will be labeled as something so that they can degrade you as a man. And that's when I feel like men and a species of men are pushed so far into a corner with their back against the wall that eventually there's going to be a state where violence cannot be avoided. And it will be like good men, and it will be like justified violence. So back to my thing, it's like I am all that. I do feel that love, and I do feel all that. But at the same time, I also feel like I have an aspect of my personality that could go equally the other way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that, man. I think that's probably an aspect of myself that I haven't explored a whole lot, the darkness.
Yeah.
But I do think it's quite interesting, like at least my own experience through the pandemic. Like I feel like now I'm a completely different person to who I was
likewise
2-3 years ago. And so my approach to what was happening in the external, if that same scenario happened again, I would operate very differently, I think.
Yeah.
And
that's honestly, so many people are like that.
Yeah. But it would still, I guess, hold that aspect of like standing for injustice, but I would choose to do it in a way that was more receptive.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, and especially myself in that phase, like we were just going at each other and one another.
100%.
And it was coming from a place of, obviously struggle and turmoil.
Yeah.
But I think that's, where we have lost a lot of the masculine structure in our society is like being able to stand strongly and almost non-reactive to be able to make the correct decisions.
Oh, people live in, grown men live in complete fear. It's like, I honestly have certain beliefs on marriage and the way I think life should be lived. But there's no way I'm going to go out of my way and take away someone else's right to live that they want to. But at the same time, I am not going to let them tell me that I have to condone and agree with what they're doing. It's like, man, you do you. I do not give a fuck. But then don't you dare come at me and tell me that I have to agree with that. Otherwise, I am intolerable. So, yeah. Berkey, what's wrong, Berkey? You want to go see Berkey?
Yeah, no, I like how you put that. It's, a fascinating one.
And maybe that's just justice. It's like you let the person be who they want to be. Let me be me, but don't you dare expect me to grab onto your belief systems.
Yeah.
Come on. Do you want to have a pause and take the boys? I just want to take them to the toilet.
Yeah.
Can we pause it?
Totally, man.
All right, sick. Come on, I'm going to take you to the toilet. Come on. You need to get that. Oh.
All right. Well, I guess we will just wrap things up. Is there anything on your heart or something that's come up for you that you might want to share?
I think if I could leave people with like one message is to understand, I was writing about this yesterday, is to understand the concept of time if you can, and really grasp that amazing things take time, and you should give that respect and respect the amount of time that it takes to build something good. But you should also disrespect time in regards to forgiving, in regards to loving, and in regards to moving on. So I think understand that you only have a certain amount of time, and certain things should be delegated long lengths of time, like building something beautiful, relationships, businesses, finances, friendship circles. You should have a lot of respect for that time, but you should almost disrespect the time that it takes to forgive someone and show love and do what the right thing is. That shouldn't take any time. So, the concept of time.
Yeah, I love that, man.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Thanks, bro. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for letting us use the space and welcoming me in. Yeah, it's been
epic,
awesome.
Man. I'm looking forward to the next one already.
Yeah, sweet.
Thanks, bro.
Cheers.